Health Upline.
We are joined by our lovely new co-host. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Helpcast. Today, we're going to be going into a rather intimate topic, touching on something that has been heavily affecting newer generations, and we believe will be affecting more generations to come. Today, we are joined by two amazing guests from the May 2025 intake. Please introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Vitash, and I am part of a group that targets conversations and really talking about and trying to bring light to this very intimate topic, as you put it, teen suicide. Next to me is my co-leader of the group.
My name is Raja Hana.
Once again, everyone, I'm your host, Jonah, and once again, we are joined by our lovely new co-host.
Yep. So again, good evening, everyone. My name is Pavan, and I'm the co-host for Helpcast. And just want to say that it's really nice to have you guys here today to talk about, I think, what is an incredibly relevant topic and is becoming more relevant as time goes on.
Indeed.
So nice to have you guys.
It's a very noble aspiration you guys have.
We are very happy
Yes.
to have this
We are
opportunity to
very
be here.
happy to be here.
Indeed, we're happy to have you here. And if you don't mind, I'd like to jump right into the questions we have today for you guys. So, what made you guys select this topic for your... Correct me if I'm mistaken, this is for your PDL project?
It is a very, I would say, relevant topic. To be honest, from our experiences with previous podcasts, taking on new people onto our podcast as well, not just me and Anna, we do see that we share a lot of similarities. The general consensus around this topic is actually very widely known. And we get to connect with people on that sort of scale, that kind of level, very efficiently, very we definitely feel that connection. And I guess it's really just really lucky that we took this topic that so many people are connecting with so deeply and emotionally. It brings out very interesting stories, and of course it helps us because we get to tell more people about it, raise an awareness for it, right? Using other people's intimate stories about this topic.
So I assume you guys have a very good connection with the community if you're able to gather so much through your initiatives.
I think people are really very passionate about talking about these things. The emotional connection they have towards, teen suicide, and really a big part of it is the mental health of it, right?
Yeah.
They have a lot of stories about not even themselves, their friends, their families. They get to talk about these things and they have to bring it up. Right? They get to bring it up. They get this opportunity, which they don't really get the opportunity to talk about it, and it's not really. It's not the best starter conversation, is it?
No,
Right?
not at all.
It's a very sensitive topic that is not really talked about a lot.
Emotionally heavy, isn't it?
But when we give them that opportunity to, when they have that opportunity to, they really light up about it. They start really releasing all that emotion and that deep story that they have.
Gee, absolutely wonderful, man. So I'd also like to ask you guys, out of curiosity, who came up with this topic? Was it a group thing? Was it any specific individual in your group?
It was a selection. We had a selection of topics, and this was the one who picked it.
Yeah, I feel like it was, there were about maybe 10 topics that we could have chosen from. But I think teen suicide just really speaks to me, and the purpose of our assignment is to raise awareness. So I think it's the best topic to raise awareness on, as of now, especially when mental health issues are very on the rise.
It resonated with you then, I guess.
Yeah.
It spoke to you. It called out to you.
Yes, it called out to me.
A very, very noble calling. Right. Pavan, any questions?
So a question that I have for you, and I think that this question is I think it's been mooted a lot, especially amongst older people circles. Let's put it that way, very simply. Oftentimes when especially adults hear about the mental health issues that teenagers are going through, the main thing that I normally hear is that teenagers haven't really faced real tough issues and problems. In a way, it's almost of discounting mental health of teenagers, and they make it seem that adults are the only ones who are like really going through things. So when you hear things like that, especially when you're talking about something like teen suicide, which is an incredibly it's not something easy to talk about. So to discount it, when adults discount teen mental health that way, what are your guys' personal opinions on that?
To be quite honest with you, it's honestly they don't understand enough.
Yeah.
Right? It's you look at their childhoods and you look at the people today, right? And the students of today, their childhood and their parents' childhood, very different. Maybe education during their time wasn't super like what it is now, right? Not as important. Maybe the job market wasn't like really targeting the degrees and whatnot. Their lives as children maybe had more freedom than ours. They have it hard, no doubt. They have it hard. Their environment makes it very hard for them to, and they feel it. They feel it. Their, income is going low, and they're struggling financially, and that's the environment they're in. But it's not only their environment that changed, it's the children's environment that also changed, right? Now we as students, we have to deal with school and parental pressure, right? And social pressure. Social pressure might be one of the biggest things, right? Because we prioritize it so heavily. When we go in, we're so anxious to find a connection with a certain group, so that we can go through life in a sort of like a smoother way, right? Without the anxiety of having to worry about fitting in, right? That's like all of these things are coming into play now, whereas if we look back then, maybe that wasn't super relevant. You didn't have to study so hard, to get a job, right? I'm just saying the times and the environment have certainly changed, and I think that children and the students, especially of today, have it hard as well.
So you would say that primarily it is a change in terms of environment, and I guess when times evolve, there are new challenges, and those challenges are no longer just stuck with adults, they're also stuck with children too, because things have become incredibly competitive.
Absolutely.
Right, and Hannah, what do you think personally? What is your opinion when you hear adults discount the mental health of teenagers?
I mean, yeah, I actually agree with like Vitash, like how it's a lot about environmental changes. Like I feel like nowadays this generation is so much more exposed to like social media.
Yeah.
So when you're more exposed to social media, there's also like news from other countries. You're more exposed to the Western world and how it's like done over there. So that is why how we think, like our generation think, is different from how the older adults think.
I certainly think that the representation of certain negative things in media certainly affected this generation's perception of how to go about dealing with certain things, right? So I would say that the media's representation of certain things like depression, right, or like in general negative emotions, maybe even anxiety, right, really set a tone for how children are supposed to deal with it, right? And I think that's whether it's for better or for worse, depending on their representation, right, of how to cope with it, right? I'm sure it makes it a very engaging story, but at the same time, it's not really showing a great way to cope with certain aspects of life, especially when it's like influencing younger children. That's really negative. I think.
So you would say that not, also with the change in environment, there's also been a lot of media exposure, and certain things that are exposed in the media actually have a big impact on, children's mental health. And I think that, and you guys would say that probably adults have not taken that into account.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll pass it back to you, Jonah.
Right. So one thing that's been running through my mind is how, in your opinion, how could a safer space, particularly one conducive for better conditions in terms of mental health, how could that be? How could we create such an environment for the future generation and generations to come? What role should schools, families, any institution that plays a role in the lives of future generations, what role should they play in that?
That's a really, really interesting question, and I really appreciate that you brought that up, Jonah, because I would like to talk about families, specifically families. Now, I wouldn't say that everyone is going through like the same like perception of how am I going to get my child to have this really nice childhood, right? I feel like that's something certain people have going through their own experiences, right, of not having the greatest childhood, right? And so they want that for their child, and they rack their brains about it on this topic, like how do I make sure that they have a very safe like mental, right? But they're not accounting for the fact that they should be increasing their own mental health before even talking about their children's, because what I'd like to highlight, right, and what we've discussed so many times and what we've seen talking about mental health so much, is that there are certain trends in mental health, one of which is that children really take after their parents. I don't know if you've heard the expression. I'm pretty sure you have.
Yes.
Children absorb information like a sponge.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
They take after their parents so much, right? And so if their parent is not going through the motion with the certain skills needed to tackle negative situations, right, it can only be that their child is also not going to have that certain skill set, right? They're going to pick up on that. It's also about relationships wise. If your parents didn't have the best relationship, it's possible, very likely that your child, right, isn't actually going to have the best relationship either, because they will just follow your your trends,
Your example.
their example, exactly. However unconscious they might be about it, they will follow it because it's just it's hard coded, right? That's the person you spend most time with, right? Your parents, right? They raised you. You kind of have to think like them sometimes, so it's about like raising your child to be well fit for the world, right? And how we can do that is by really focusing on ourselves first. You gotta improve yourself mentally, of course, through the certain good habits, right, that increase your well-being, right, your health, your general health, and eventually that'll just imprint on your child, right? As for schools, I'm not sure if I'm the best suited to talk about this. I am a very stressed student, right? I don't know if I can talk a lot about this, but what would I like to see? What would I like to see from schools is a lot more support. Like what we're doing now, I feel really nice about it. It feels very fulfilling to have this sort of support, right? And I think that helps me cope very well.
Yeah, I think for me, for like school, right? I think honestly, the teachers, like honestly, they shouldn't put too much pressure on the students, because like those pressure is like really what affects the mental health of the students. And like let's say, like I don't know how to put this in the right way, but like sometimes there are like toxic teachers that will compare you to another student who is doing way much better in their studies.
We've all seen one of those, haven't we?
Yes, but I think that is like not the best, because you will constantly compare yourself to this other individual who's doing so much better than you, and it would honestly discourage you like in every single thing, like not just like academics, but maybe even your sports or like just you in general.
I completely agree with her. This really does tie back to the relationship part of it, right? Especially when you're like a young teenager or even late teenager, a certain role model in your life really affects you, right? So whether it be your parents or a teacher, the way that they teach you, the way that they talk to you, the way that they encourage you, very vitally important to your success, right? There's a saying I kind of like. It's there's no such thing as a bad student, only a bad teacher, right? And I feel like it is so true. If a student, an individual, is not really doing so well, is it not the teacher's job to increase their level in their academics or their sports or even their general, well-being, right? So one-on-ones. One-on-ones. This teacher could take some time out of their day to have a one-on-one session with that child. But they're not, obviously, right? If so, we wouldn't have all these, issues being brought up and these toxic teachers that, we kind of label them, right? We can kind of tell, oh, this teacher is kind of,
Yeah, I get what you mean.
It's like it's almost sort of like a practice intolerance of,
Yeah, and I feel like this is especially prevalent in schools with less resources available on hand. I don't mean to call them out, but government schools in particular. Yeah. With a class of, say, 40 plus students on hand, I feel like sometimes the teachers as well are a bit short-handed. Let's say 10, 11, maybe even 20 students are left behind. I don't think the teacher could single-handedly provide for all of them on one-on-one.
Yeah, and I think I guess for the parents as well, I guess it's easy to say that your child's mental health starts at home.
Yeah.
The condition of their mental health, at least. If you are raising a child, and to the moms and dads out there, if you are going to raise a child in a situation, and I understand that not every single mom and dad has everything, that they're not able to provide everything to their children. Sometimes there will be shortfalls. Not everyone's situation is the same, but you've got to make the best of it, and perhaps utilizing what you have and giving your child the best experience that they can get, would be probably the best stepping stone. And I guess to the teachers as well, especially being run through the mill of government schools, we can tell that the support for mental health, especially teenagers' mental health, has not really been expanded across the board. And I think that is something that has to be taken into account.
Yeah, it's really lacking, isn't it? Particularly. So, please do continue.
Sure. And it's not also just the teacher's fault. Sometimes I think there is powers there that will have to take accountability for that. Back to you, John.
Especially when it comes to the lack of investment in the public education system. And not just a lack of investment, a rather disproportionate investment.
Yep.
To avoid digging into this further and flaring up emotions regarding it, perhaps I'd like to ask you guys another question. So, looking back on media, social media, the rise and prevalence of social media in the lives of teenagers nowadays, do you feel that it does more, the content it portrays, do you feel like it does more harm, or does it bring better degrees of support to teenagers nowadays?
It's not like there isn't a world for both, right? There isn't a presence of both. It's just that for the wider audience who find pleasure in consuming content, that specific content is usually more towards an engaging the audience through emotions. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It could be very well spirited and whatnot, but at the same time, again, with the portrayal of how teenagers, right, deal with their school environment, how they deal with their parents, right, at home, their environment, everything, and how it's portrayed in media is honestly quite negative, right? They're not doing a great job of representing very well. They really want to connect with the emotions, the negative emotions, because that's what's more engaging, right? That's what sells the most, right? But in the end, it's not really helping the cause. As much as they'd like to say, "Oh, this film is to highlight the severity of this situation," it's not actually helping the situation, is it? Much rather, it's more like they're trying to make some money out of it.
Yeah.
That's what I think personally.
Yeah, I think, they always, okay, let's say there are those shows that like talk about mental health, right? But when they talk about it, they're just talking about it. They're not actually showing how you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's like one of the negative parts of, content made about, all these teen suicide, mental health.
I also think it's also like another way of like how people imitate, right? We talked about
yes.
teachers, we talked about parents, we're talking about media here and cartoons, right? When we talk about teen suicide, we also have to address their past, their childhood, what did they grow up with, right? That's vitally important as well because how they act is also from the content they consume, right? So I think if they consume negatively, they will act out negatively. Which I also think there's not enough representation of finding help. There's a lot of self journeys, right? Independent journeys, but there's not a lot of talking about your own situation, right? And I feel like that's really like what do you call it? So hard to do nowadays, right? Not many people really go out of their way to find help. It's considered kind of like an embarrassing topic to kind of bring up, right? You're not going to talk about your problems like that. You don't want to talk about it to your parents. You're not going to bring it up because you don't want to be felt. You don't want to feel like you're misunderstood. You don't want to be misunderstood. You want to be understood, right? You think they won't get you, or do you think they will ignore you, right? These are the representations that are affecting them quite negatively, especially when they need to seek help, right? It is vitally important for them to have a support system.
So, in your opinion, do you believe that more conciliatory, more positive tones should be adopted by the film industry when touching on things like this?
I think that is very important. Not just for certain negative topics and heartcomings, everyday social, interactions and whatnot, daily lives, right? Daily routines should also really be taken into account and be addressed by these cartoons, shall we say, right? Or just media in general, right? The more positive things we can show, the more positive things they may imitate, right? But at the same time, it's not really about cartoons, is it? It's not just about cartoons. It's also about your parents, right? If your parents aren't in the best spot, you're not going to be in the best spot. If you have a teacher that you're close with and they're not in the best spot, they may affect you negatively and that might bring you down. They might bring you down as much as they care about you, as much, as they have a heart for you. They might be tackling it in the wrong way, right? Same as cartoons. They are, or media in general. I'm sure they have a heart, especially for certain topics like this, with the rise of it. But the way they tackle it, it's not effective enough, right?
Yeah. Do you guys have any recommendations for the film industry as a group that's actively campaigning against teen suicide?
Better representation.
Better representation?
Better representation should be one of them.
Wonderful. Back to you, Pavan?
Yeah, I just want to say that, with social media, I think a lot of us can acknowledge that social media does have a positive impact. Unfortunately, I think what you could probably say the cancer of social media is that it's a lot easier to sell the problem than to sell the solution. Because when you keep selling the problem, people will keep paying to find the solution and they never find it. Right? And I think that is something that you mentioned earlier. It's focusing more on the negative because that's what sells. It's what sells. Right? And just to wrap up, my final question would be, well, actually, two questions. You guys are raising awareness about teen suicide, and I think it is something that should be done. What steps are you guys actively taking in order to ensure that your voices are heard? So I'll pass it to you, Vitash, if you'd like to answer.
the steps that we're taking, we are going in a certain direction that is very a part of media, right?
Okay.
The things we're doing, we're hosting our own podcast. Obviously, we're honored to be here, right? This
Yeah.
opportunity is great for us, right?
We're happy to
Especially to increase our voice. This might be one of the biggest stepping stones we're taking, other than our booth, right? Our booth, which
It's a wonderful
Yeah,
booth, by the way. It's an amazing
we
booth.
did see the booth. It is incredible.
but we really do want to tackle it in the way that impacts people most, and I think that the number one thing that people are doing nowadays is obviously social media, right? So we really want to like slip into that industry and kind of like spread our message there, right, in an attempt to remedy the situation.
For me, it's like how you said, how nowadays media are showing a bad representation. So I guess we want to counterattack that.
Encounter.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You guys want to be what we would probably call the contrarians. And
Good light. Yeah.
yeah, and I guess
Contrarians in a good light.
the last question I would have, just to wrap everything up, is if your media campaign, and I hope it succeeds, and I'm sure it will, because you guys are really putting effort into this, and we at Helpcast here do endorse their message of raising
do,
awareness.
101%.
On behalf of everyone here, we do, support your message and believe that it's great to raise awareness about this issue.
They're
If-
fighting the good fight.
Precisely. If your awareness campaign succeeds, what would be the next step?
I feel like this is a never-ending process, especially with harder times come like more problems, right? If I feel like the thing that we're aiming for now is to solidify the facts and solidify the methods that they can take
All right.
to solve their hard problems, because I'm sure that everywhere around the world they have their own problems from A to Z, from difficulty levels easy to extremely difficult, right? But if we can provide them with like the greatest solution towards solving these problems in the most effective ways by selling these stories as well. It's not like we're not selling these stories. We are selling these stories in a way to engage with the audience, but we're also slipping that kind of like positive message. You can do this to help out with your situation, right? And if we can solidify this fact in these ways to solve these solutions, I think we would have achieved our goal, to be honest.
So your goal would be, instead of selling the problem, this time we are selling the solution. And that, I think, ladies and gentlemen, is something that I really commend you guys for doing. I mean, this is something that really needs to be heard. I think it's been discounted for too long. It's been on sale for too long, ladies and gentlemen. Let's bring it back to full price.
Exactly.
Right. So back to you, Jonah.
Right, so I'd like to thank you guys, the wonderful two co-spears of Helpline, for coming on Helpcast. We're really happy to have you. We're glad you could make it. And as Pavan mentioned, on behalf of the entire Helpcast team, we hope you guys succeed in your mission.
Absolutely.
We'll be backing you 101% throughout the way.
Alright.
You got this, man.
Thank you.
You got this. Wonderful. And thank you everyone for tuning in.
And just something to add, your guys' podcast is called
Helpline.
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 Well, from one podcast to another, please listen to that podcast, guys. As Jonah said, this is something that I believe is amazing, and I think that with you guys being able to raise awareness like this, it would be an immense achievement, not just for you guys, but for the whole of the teenage community. So on behalf, I thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming, and thank you everyone for tuning in once again. We hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more, and that is Helpcast. Helpcast signing out. Testing.
Mic test.
Assalamualaikum.
Hi.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. My co-host abused me just now. 1, 2, 3.
So I am the group leader, kind of the spearhead of the topic of teen suicide, and next to me is my co-spear. Co-spear.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. The co-stick.
Go stick.
Take one and action.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Helpcast. Today, we're going to be going into a rather intimate.
Jonah, you're still on the mic.